Let's slow down and think about what really happens when people don't value us. Most of the time, our first reaction is to do more. We talk more, we explain more, we compromise more, all in the hope that if we just prove ourselves enough, they'll finally see our worth. It's almost instinctive. Somewhere inside the mind whispers, if I work harder, if I show them how good I am, they'll respect me. And at first glance, that sounds noble. But if you look deeper, it's a trap. Because the harder you chase someone's validation, the more power you hand over to them. You're essentially saying, I don't believe in my own value until you confirm it. Now think about the weight of that. When your sense of worth depends on someone else's recognition, you're no longer free. You're tethered to their opinions, their moods, their approval, like a balloon tied to someone else's hand. They let go, you crash, they smile, you rise, they frown, you deflate. And that cycle is exhausting because it's not sustainable. People are unpredictable. People change. If your value rises and falls with their perception, you'll always be unstable. The deeper truth is this: when people don't value you, it doesn't necessarily mean you're lacking. Many times, it means they are blind to what's in front of them. Their vision is clouded by ego, by comparison, by insecurity, or simply by their own limited perspective. But because we're human, we internalize it. We think, if they don't see it, maybe it's not there. That's the illusion. And unless you break free from that illusion, you'll live your life proving yourself to people who were never meant to recognize you in the first place. Psychologists talk about something called external locus of control. When you believe your life is determined by outside forces, by what people think of you, by circumstances you can't control, that mindset breeds anxiety, dependency, and resentment. But when you shift to an internal locus of control, when you believe your worth and direction come from within, you stop being a hostage to other people's opinions. You begin to anchor yourself in something deeper, something unshakable. So, what does this look like in practice? It means refusing to explain yourself endlessly to people who have already decided not to listen. It means not lowering your standards to earn a seat at someone else's table. It means catching yourself in the act of over-giving, over-explaining, and overcompensating, and reminding yourself, I don't need to audition for respect. Think about the irony here. The people we often try the hardest to convince are usually the least capable of appreciating us. You can give them your best, your loyalty, your consistency, and they'll still find ways to dismiss it. Not because it isn't valuable, but because they've already chosen not to value it. And once you understand that, the game changes. You stop pouring energy into empty wells. You stop offering explanations to ears that are closed. You stop turning your worth into a performance for an audience that has no intention of clapping. There's a quiet strength in withdrawing from the chase. At first, it feels uncomfortable. You feel guilty for not explaining yourself, for not proving your point, for not bending over backward. But over time, you realize it's liberating. You realize the more you chase, the smaller you become in your own eyes. But the moment you stop, the moment you hold steady and say, whether you see me or not, I know who I am, something shifts. That's when self-respect starts to grow roots. Philosophers have said for centuries that self-worth cannot be borrowed, it must be owned. The Stoics, for example, taught that if your peace depends on the approval of others, you will never be free. Freedom comes when you realize that dignity is an inside job. And once you grasp that, you see how much of life is wasted on people who were never supposed to define you. Let me tell you something powerful. When you stop chasing validation, you don't lose value, you reveal it. Because suddenly, people see someone who doesn't need their approval to stand tall. They see someone whose confidence doesn't rise and fall with applause. And that kind of presence, that kind of self-assurance, demands respect without ever asking for it. Ironically, the moment you stop begging for recognition is often the moment you start receiving it. But by then, you no longer need it. So here's the shift. Instead of trying to change their perception, change your posture. Instead of asking, why don't they value me? Start asking, why am I still giving them the power to decide? That's where freedom begins. That's where your energy begins to flow back toward you. And that's where you begin to walk with the quiet confidence of someone who no longer auditions for their own worth. Remember this, your value is not a debate. It's not something to be proven or negotiated. It's something to be lived. When you stop chasing, you stop shrinking. When you stop explaining, you stop doubting. And when you stop begging for recognition, you finally start owning the truth that was there all along. You were valuable, even when they couldn't see it. So the next time you feel that urge to prove yourself, to explain yourself, to chase after someone's approval, pause and remind yourself you don't need their eyes to see your worth. You don't need their words to confirm your value. Because the moment you stop chasing validation, you start stepping into the power of someone who no longer needs it. And that is where your freedom begins. When you finally stop chasing the approval of people who don't value you, the natural question becomes, what now? Where do you place all that energy, that time, that emotional investment you were once pouring into the wrong places? Because the truth is, that energy doesn't just disappear. It has to go somewhere. And this is where the second shift takes place. You begin to redirect that energy towards spaces, people, and opportunities that recognize your worth. Here's the reality. We live in a world full of tables. Some tables are crowded with noise, judgment, and competition, while others are built on trust, respect, and growth. Too many people spend their lives begging for a chair at the wrong table. They keep knocking on doors that were never meant to open, all while ignoring the doors that were quietly waiting for them to walk through. And the longer you stay in those spaces where you're undervalued, the more you start to believe that's all you deserve. But let's be honest, staying in places where your worth isn't seen is more than just unfulfilling, it's corrosive. It slowly eats away at your self-esteem. It convinces you that invisibility is normal, that silence is acceptable, that mediocrity in how you're treated is something you should tolerate. And that is a lie, because every second spent in the wrong place is a second stolen from the right one. Every ounce of effort wasted trying to convince the wrong crowd is energy taken away from the people who would have embraced you without question. This is why redirection is powerful. Redirection is not about giving up. It's not about bitterness. It's not about proving anyone wrong. It's about wisdom. It's about looking at your life with clarity and saying, if this space refuses to honor me, I will find one that does. That is not weakness. That is strength, because the strongest thing you can do is remove yourself from what diminishes you and invest yourself where you can grow. Think about it like a plant. If you plant something in poor soil, it doesn't matter how much water you pour or how much sunlight it receives. It will struggle, not because the plant is weak, but because the soil is wrong. The same is true for us. You can bring loyalty, effort, kindness, intelligence, all the qualities that make you who you are. But if the environment is toxic, if the people are dismissive, if the atmosphere is not nurturing, you will wither. But when you place that same plant in rich soil, everything changes. Growth happens naturally. Value is no longer questioned, it is simply expressed. The challenge, of course, is that redirection requires courage. Walking away feels risky. It feels uncertain. The human brain craves familiarity, even if that familiarity is painful. That's why people stay in jobs that diminish them, relationships that neglect them, and friendships that drain them. They convince themselves it's safer to stay where they're not valued than to face the unknown of starting over. But here's the paradox, D. The unknown is not your enemy, it's your possibility. The moment you step away from scarcity, you create room for abundance. The moment you stop settling, you start inviting better. And let's take this deeper. Philosophically, when you accept being undervalued, you are telling life itself that you are content with less than your worth. And life has a way of mirroring back to you what you tolerate. But when you shift, when you say no more, life also responds. Opportunities begin to align. The right people begin to appear. And it's not because the universe suddenly changed, it's because you did. By walking away from what doesn't serve you, you free your attention to notice what does. Imagine redirecting all the time you spent proving yourself to someone who ignored you into building something that expresses your true potential. Imagine taking the energy You once used to explain yourself into mastering your craft, pursuing your passions, or nurturing connections that genuinely see you. That shift is not small, it's transformative, because the truth is your energy is one of the most valuable currencies you own. Wherever you spend it, something grows. The question is, what are you growing? If you spend it on people who dismiss you, you grow resentment. If you spend it on environments that overlook you, you grow self-doubt. But if you spend it on spaces that recognize you, you grow confidence, peace, and strength. The direction of your energy determines the trajectory of your life, and this is not just emotional advice, it's deeply practical. Redirecting your energy means choosing better company, yes, but it also means making decisions about how you use your time, what goals you pursue, and what kind of future you want to build. It means walking away from conversations that diminish you and walking toward conversations that sharpen you. It means releasing the need to be included everywhere and instead focusing on being intentional about where you belong. Because belonging is not about fitting in, it's about being valued for who you are. So ask yourself, where in your life are you still pouring into empty wells? Where are you showing up, giving your best, only to be overlooked? And then ask yourself the harder question, what would happen if you redirected that same energy into building your own table, into investing in people who actually invest back, into creating a future where you no longer have to beg to be seen? The answer is simple. You would flourish. Because the truth is, you are not meant to be tolerated, you are meant to be valued. You are not meant to survive in scarcity, you are meant to thrive in abundance. And the only way to step into that abundance is to stop forcing yourself into spaces that shrink you and start seeking out the ones that expand you. And here's the irony, when you do this, when you walk away from being undervalued and redirect your energy, you will discover something surprising. The very people who once overlooked you may begin to notice. They may wonder why you no longer bend, why you no longer explain, why you no longer chase. But by then, it won't matter, because you'll have learned the most important lesson of all, that the recognition you truly needed was never theirs to give. It was always yours to claim. Stop knocking on doors that refuse to open. Redirect your energy, build your own table, and watch how your life changes when you choose to place your worth where it's seen, honored, and celebrated.